So I think you, from what I can see, I think there's something about you that is attracted to the extremity of living, though.
I mean, I think that's true about everybody, but to varying degrees. I mean, I'm easily frightened and I'm pretty cautious. And when I take risks, it's a very rational process. Like I really try to figure out like what level of risk am I running and what's the reward, what am I getting back from it? What's the value of this? But starting in my late 20s, I was a climber for tree companies. I was an arborist and I worked, 70, 80 feet in the air on a rope with a chainsaw taking trees down. And that's only dangerous if you make a mistake. And I had this idea that risk is only risk if you screw up. And otherwise you're just doing something, very skillfully and very well that looks dangerous, but actually if you're good at it, it's not dangerous. And that's not at all true of war, but it did give me the feeling that there's some control when you're in a dangerous situation, you still have a certain amount of control over the outcome.
So do you think there's a combination of control and luck then?
Yes. Good soldiers take less casualties, but they still get killed because bullets are just weird and they hit, there's not much you can do. If a bullet is coming towards you, there's nothing you can do, and there's very little you can do to affect whether someone's shooting right at you at a distance of 400 yards. But overall, over the course of a year, a good unit will take less casualties than a bad unit in the same circumstances.
But for me, I can see that, but there's something about you as a person that wants to put yourself in these kind of, even though you're saying you mitigate risk and you look at boundaries of risk, there is something about the war that must have attracted you in terms of like putting yourself in such danger there's an element of you that's pushing those boundaries, that's sort of taking that control away.
Well, I mean, just because war is dangerous doesn't mean that the danger is what people are after when they go to war. Like in war, there's a lot of things happening. There's some very intense bonding that happens in these small units. It's physically very, very testing of people, and it's kind of pure in a way, like the sort of static and fuzz of life in society completely falls away. Life is extremely elemental and black and white, and so all of these things are appealing and satisfy, dimensions, sort of hidden dimensions of a person that maybe aren't evident in society. And so when soldiers or journalists are drawn to war, I hate the feeling of being scared. I absolutely hate it. If I'm never scared again in my life, I'll be very, very happy. That's really not what I'm after when I report these stories. What I'm after is there's a lot of other things. Like there's a feeling of urgency and importance to the story. The world needs to know this. When I was in Sierra Leone, when I was in Bosnia, like you get filled with a sense of purpose that is really intoxicating, and it's independent of the level of risk you're running. Risk is like there is a kind of adrenaline component to risk, but I would say that's a very minor note in the collection of things that makes journalism appealing to journalists.
Yeah, I mean, I think this definitely, I do agree. I mean, part of the attraction of the film for me is that there are so many aspects of it that I feel that it brought to the fore that would enable the debate to start, because I've been, like I said, here since 2001, but, I really want people to engage with the conflict so that they start making more informed choices about where and how and who we send to combative situations, which for me, that was part of the appeal. So I was just thinking, when you were in the Korengal Valley, did you ever, because obviously you're as a journalist and as a writer, you're independent you were technically independent, you weren't a soldier. So did you ever feel that you could just pop out to the village and go and get some milk?
Oh God, no. No, of course not. No. I mean, that would violate the rules of the embed. I mean, once you leave the jurisdiction of the U.S. military, your embed's over. So because what they don't want is to wind up in a situation where they're responsible for your safety, but you're actually outside of their jurisdiction. And had I gone down to the local village to chat with the locals, I would have been kidnapped and probably killed immediately. Not necessarily by the locals, but the Taliban in the valley would have come to that village immediately to grab me. So no, I never could have done that.
Does that mean that you became the enemy then, do you think?
That I became the enemy?
Yeah, like in terms of your function within the environment, is that, I mean, as much as you were a target, that sort of lack of liberation that you had to be able to go to the, I mean, regardless of the rules of the embed, as an independent, as a non-combative soldier, but just as a person who was in that place, that you didn't have that freedom to do that because of the risks. Did that make you feel like you were part of this infidel culture?
Well, I mean, I definitely was part of the Society of Soldiers, and my human connections were within that group, and my safety lay with my security came out of that group. If I went to the Korengal right now, there's no soldiers in the Korengal. If I went to the Korengal right now and tried to talk to the locals, I'd be kidnapped and killed. Like, that's true whether there's American soldiers in the Korengal or not. And those guys, the guys I was with, were getting shot at every day, and my safety depended on the fact that they shot back. So yeah, I definitely felt like that they were my tribe. For the purposes of my year over there, they were my tribe. And that's exactly what I was trying to write about, was tribalism. So that suited me fine.
Yeah. Apparently, you're not much of a talker when you're in a group, and that you engaged more on a one-on-one level. Why was that then, do you think?
I don't know. I've just always been like that. I didn't have a big family. I was a pretty shy kid, and I'm fine one-on-one. But the bigger the group, the less I say, and that was true out there too. Yeah. I like watching people and trying to understand them.
Yeah, there was a big age difference between you and the soldiers. Although obviously I appreciate that you probably don't think of it like that. So how did you overcome that? Did you have to learn like a new language, like a new tribal language? Did you start speaking infantry?
Infantry. Yeah, I mean, to the extent there's a military language, it's not dependent on age, but it is. Yeah, I mean, there is a kind of war language, and that's been true since the Stone Age, probably. I mean, men speak differently when they're away from women and children, and they do that whether they're at war or on a rooftop on a construction job.
Did you get det Tourette's?
Did I get what?
Det Tourette's. Do you know what that is? Yeah. That's when you say fuck every other word. You just swear constantly. There's two things about being on deployment: swearing constantly and eating too quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And all those horrible acronyms that the military uses, they use them for a reason, because they're shorter. And so it would never occur to me to say firefight. I would say TIC, T-I-C, troops in contact. So that kind of thing just creeps into your language, that and an enormous amount of swearing.
Do you know what we call those things? We call them TLAs, 3-letter abbreviations.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Hey, hold on one second. Hey, man, I'm doing an interview. Can I call you back? All right.
Okay.